Hey guys, welcome back. Today, you're in for a treat. We've got three great stories lined up, and I can't wait to get into them. So, let's go. This first story is from r/nosleep by the user Manen Lyset. A package marked Return to Sender. My neighbour is one of those annoying wannabe YouTube personalities. Over the years, I've seen him cough out cinnamon, lay flat on the hood of his car as it slowly creeps down the driveway, and douse himself in lukewarm water. All the while screaming, epic win, epic fail, or fuck, epic maintenance of the status quo, for all I know. It can get tiring to watch him go about his shenanigans in the pursuit of viral fame. So when he knocked on my door the other day, told me he was going away for a few weeks, and asked that I get his mail, honestly, it was a relief. I can't explain the peace of mind I had knowing I didn't have to brace myself for any of his stupidity for a while. I was always afraid his stunts would wind up bleeding over into my life. Things were pretty normal for the first couple of days. He received a few bills, a bit of spam, and what I could only assume was a birthday card. Then, one evening, I got home to find a cardboard box waiting on his front porch. In big red letters was written, Return to Sender. I'm no small fry, but I admit I had trouble lifting the box on my own. It was really freaking heavy. Lugging it across the road to my house was even harder, and I quickly realised there was no way I was going to drag it up the stairs and through my front door. I decided I'd leave his package in my garage. It wasn't like I kept my car in there. The garage door was a piece of shit that refused to open without a good thug and a whack. It was less trouble just leaving the car in the driveway than it was to fight with the garage door every morning and night. In hindsight, I should have set the package down while I struggled to open the tricky door. But you know how it is when you've got a good grip on something, no point in setting it down if you don't have to. It was as I kicked the door for a third time that I lost my grip on the package and it fell to the ground. I heard a light crack inside. Shit, I cursed. I hope I hadn't broken anything important, but figured I just wouldn't tell my neighbour about it and let him assume the break happened en route. Hands-free, I finally managed to get the garage door unstuck, and boy did it screech in protest as it rolled up and over me. I dragged the box the rest of the way, setting it in the corner for whenever my neighbour would come back to claim it. And then I forgot all about it, until a few days passed, that is. I'm not sure exactly how long it took for the smell to waft in from the crack under the garage to house door, but it came in slow progression. It was a sickly sweet odour similar to a skunk, and for the first few days after I smelt it, I genuinely assumed that's what it was. Roadkill that had left its mark on my house. It was only when I realised the scent was growing more intense instead of fading that I went looking for a source. That's when I opened the garage door, and that's when the odour knocked me back, holding my nose. The culprit wasn't hard to identify. The only change in my garage was the box in the corner. I remember thinking it must have been one of those meat of the month subscription boxes. The meat must have gone rancid from being left out of the fridge for so long. How much meat could have been in there for the box to have been so large and so heavy? An entire freaking cow? I covered my nose as I approached the box, a pair of scissors in my hand. I probably wouldn't have needed them to open it, as it had become soggy enough at the bottom to poke through with a finger. But I wasn't about to poke my finger into spoiled meat juices. That soggy bottom was the reason I had to open the box in the first place. If I tried to drag it out whole, everything would spill onto the floor. I was going to have to dump the pieces of meat one garbage bag at a time and take them down to the dumpster, a process I wasn't looking forward to. My scissors tore through the tape along the top of the cardboard box. I thought the smell couldn't get any worse, but as I flipped the flaps open, I discovered a whole new gamut of stink. It was like opening a burning oven, but instead of a heat wave, I was met with waves of piss, sweat, shit, and putrefaction. It was so bad that I staggered back and had to force down the puke, begging to guzzle out of me. I don't think I could have handled that scent mingling with the horrors coming out of the box. I'm not ashamed to admit I ran out of the door for a breath of fresh air, but in the short time I'd spent in the garage, the smell had become so ingrained in the fabric of my clothes that it clung to me like a shadow. Nothing I tried could keep the smell out of my nostrils. Not air fresheners, not a face mask, not 3 showers and a change of clothes. Every second that box lay open in my garage was another second the smell was allowed a foothold into my home. I had to bite the bullet. I returned to my garage, the flaps of the box still open, as though inviting me to look. I was prepared, a clothespin pinning my nostrils shut, a garbage bag in one hand, the strongest cleaner I could find in the other, and long rubber gloves to keep my skin from having to touch what was inside. But, as it turns out, I needed none of those things. I wouldn't have to touch or clean the contents of that box. I would only have to suffer the nightmares every night. You see, there was meat in that box, but it didn't come from a cow or a pig. No, it was worse than that. It was my neighbour. Dead. Still in one piece, but dead. I called the cops, and naturally, they took me in for interrogation. It's kind of hard not to suspect the man with a corpse in his garage after all. Thankfully, they soon realised I wasn't involved. My DNA might have been all over that box. The smell might have left a mark throughout my house, but there was one piece of irrefutable evidence in my neighbour's own hands that provided my innocence: a vlogging camera. They showed me the footage only once. I'm not sure if they were allowed to, or if they felt so bad for me they figured it couldn't hurt. Either way, I saw it. My neighbour was sitting in the box outside of a shipping facility, laughing as he told the world how he was going to mail himself across state lines. He'd brought pee bottles, food, a pillow, and a few flashlights. His friend, a guy I'd seen at his place several times to help with his stunts, closed the lid and presumably dropped him off for shipment. Throughout the next couple of hours or days, I'm honestly not sure, my neighbour recorded a few short clips about his progress. I think I'm in a truck now. I can feel it moving. Must be in a warehouse. Pretty warm here. Still got plenty of food. That kind of stuff. And then, on the last entry, the box toppled over. He broke his neck, and that was it. The camera recorded until either the memory card got too full or the battery died. There's one thing I didn't tell the police after they showed me the video. One thing I heard in the footage that will haunt me to the day I die. Just after the tumble that broke his neck, I heard the familiar screeching sound of my garage door. Damn, that last line got me good, man. That was a good read. Thanks once again to the author for that story, and let's swiftly move on to this next one. Also from r/nosleep by the user AI1267. Richter syndrome. Like all stories, I suppose I should start at the beginning. My name's Perry Kears. I'm 37 years old, work in education and usability. Weird combo, I know. And I like hard rock and big band jazz. I enjoy playing darts, cooperative games and playing rounders. Oh, and I'm married, though I suppose I might as well not be. Sorry, I suppose that's not really the beginning at all. Let me try again. My wife, Alice, and I had been married for 5 years when the trouble started. Now, I don't believe in the supernatural, per se, at least not rationally. Having studied psychology as part of my educational program, I do, however, believe in the power of the psyche to create incredibly elaborate traps for itself to get lost in. I suppose the closest thing I can come to think of the paranormal is how an otherwise seemingly healthy brain starts to put itself through impossible puzzles and challenges without having any real motivation for doing so. I want to make it perfectly clear right now that my wife had no history of mental illness, no abuse, no need to hide or compensate for things in her life, in her psyche. Hell, it took me almost a year before I ever even heard of Richter syndrome. Have you? I'm not surprised if you haven't. It seems it's incredibly rare and not considered an actual disease. The similarities between cases are too much like one another for it to be a coincidence, however. But once again, I suppose I'm not really starting from the beginning. Alice worked with children with learning disabilities aged 10 to 16. She was very patient and quite honestly put me to shame in her ability to explain things in easy to understand ways. She was, in my belief, also gorgeous, funny, intelligent, curious, and all in all, a very good person. I think I remember the first instance of the Richter syndrome rearing its ugly head. We'd been cuddling a bit on the couch on a Friday evening after dinner, watching some easy to digest movie or another. She got up, telling me she was going to send a couple of work emails before bed, kissed me, and walked upstairs. To my surprise, it took less than 5 minutes for her to come down again and sidle up against me. She seemed a bit perturbed by something, but I shrugged it off. Done already, hun? No. I think the computer's broken. There's something weird going on with the screen. A big line or tear or something straight across it. I groaned in my mind. A broken monitor, while not a huge expense, is still annoying as hell, especially considering it wasn't that old. I didn't think any more of it until the next morning. I got up first, as I usually do, letting her sleep in. Figuring to get a head start, I went and turned on the stationery in our joint workroom to see if I could see what's wrong and how big an issue it was. Considering Alice got no work done, I figured it was big. But fiddle as I might, I couldn't find anything wrong with it. Chalking it up to a graphics glitch or similar, I made a mental note of cleaning the inside of the chassis and went to make breakfast. Apparently, the effects of Richter syndrome are compounded over time, so it starts out slow, then accelerates exponentially. The next incident, if you can even call it that, didn't happen until, I don't know, 4 months later? We were once again on the couch, cuddling and watching a movie. She's got her arm up behind my back, absently playing with the hair on the back of my head. She often does this, and I love it. But this time, after fiddling around a bit, she would repeat the same motion, a downward stroke with 2 fingers, then a swipe right left, then left right, as if covering up the downward stroke. Rinse and repeat. At first I didn't react to it, but after she'd been doing it for a good 10 or 15 minutes, I got curious. Hun, why are you combing the same spot over and over? What do you mean? She looked at me in askance, apparently not understanding the question. Well, you've been sort of combing over the same spot on the back of my head for about a quarter of an hour now. Do I have something in my hair? Oh, no, I think you have like a straight patch where you're losing a bit of hair. A straight patch? Yeah, like a line. Untangling myself from her, I felt around the back of my head, but couldn't find any area where the hair was thinner. You sure? Yeah, she said, touching me on the back of the head again. A pause, a bit of fiddling, then, I can't feel it anymore. I must have imagined it. Yeah, I suppose. It struck me as weird, but hell, we're entitled to that, aren't we? Next time was a couple of months later, after which things started accelerating. I came home early one day to see her at the dinner table, objectively looking down into what looked like a barely touched lunch. At first, she didn't react when I called out to her, so I went up to her, gave her a hug and a kiss, and asked what was wrong. Oh, hey Perry, nothing, I went down to the bookstore to return that book I bought last week, because it was damaged during printing or something, and the clerk told me I was just imagining things, and that there was nothing wrong. I pointed it out to her, and she started telling me I was nuts, and that this was my problem. I asked to talk to her manager about it, and she started calling me crazy and foul things, and to get out of the store. It was just so sudden. It completely killed my mood. The kids are out for a sports day today, so I went home early. I spoke gently to her as I hugged her again, nuzzling her wonderful curly chestnut hair. It's okay, hun. Try not to let it get to you. People like that are horrible, and they're just trying to drag you down with them. Tell you what, why don't we go to the movies tonight, eat out, and just forget about this, and I'll take it down to the store first thing Monday. She smiled then, that lovely, warm smile, and kissed me. I think that was the last time I saw that smile as it should be. Come Monday, I went down to the store, intending to, well, to be honest, I went there intending to start trouble. You don't yell at my wife and get away with it. Not my gentle, loving Alice. Turns out, the clerk at the store and her manager had a different story to tell. They told me Alice had come in complaining that there was a crease or tear in the book that must have happened during printing and demanded a new book. The clerk, per procedure, checked the book before intending to dispose of it, but was confused when she couldn't find anything wrong with it. Asking my wife about it, Alice had told the clerk that it's right there, page 32 to 84. So naturally, I opened the book myself and, well, okay, I hadn't actually checked it before, but flipping through the pages, I couldn't find a single thing wrong with it. The clerk's manager continued the story, saying that when the clerk prompted Alice, my wife had gotten angry and raised her voice, causing the manager to come over. Alice had told them that they were swindlers, and that the book was obviously defective, and that they just wouldn't take responsibility. The argument had devolved from there, Alice insisting that the pages were somehow torn or marked, and them denying it. Eventually, the manager had lost it and told Alice she was crazy and to leave the store. She seemed remorseful about it, and I wasn't too happy with it. But seeing as how there wasn't anything wrong with the book, I asked them if they would replace it for me, just to settle my wife's mind and mine, and the manager agreed. I think she just wanted to put it behind her, so did I. As it turns out, that was a futile hope. After this, I forget in which order things happen. All I can say is, things started getting worse. She threw away a store-bought salad when we were out walking, because someone had obviously dug around in it, looking for something in the middle. I came home one day to half the lawn being mowed so deep there was almost no grass left. Alice said there was a furrow in the grass that looked horrible, so she cut until the grass was of equal length, so it wouldn't look weird. I got an ominous feeling after that, compounded by several other small but significant events, always with the tears, furrows, lines and rips. About 2 years after the first event, things started getting really bad. I came home to the house smelling of smoke, and went upstairs to find Alice having ironed a shirt so hard she'd burned her way through it and into the ironing board beneath. She didn't seem to realise the damage she was doing, and insisted she was just trying to iron out a stubborn crease. Later that same week, the police brought her home. The story they told me was that she'd been chucking books at the manager down at the bookstore, claiming they were all faulty and torn. The manager, recognising my wife, had told the police she wouldn't press charges if I agreed to get her some help. What else could I do? But she resisted efforts to get better, claiming she was fine, that it was somehow just a big conspiracy against her, trying to cover up the imperfections and mistakes all over the world, people ruining things, like our lawn, to try and get to her. About a week after the book incident, I came to her having wrecked her laptop, our stationary computer, and the SmartPad, claiming they had pixelated grooves in them. Another week with lots of small events, all with the same fixation, and I came home to the police ringing on the door again. This time, without my wife. Turns out she'd tried ironing out a crease in the suit jacket belonging to a father of one of her students while he was wearing it, with a baseball bat. Apparently he hadn't gotten badly hurt, just some bruises, but she'd been taken into an emergency psych ward, raving about people's blindness to the tears and grooves everywhere. When I got there, they wouldn't let me see her, saying she was violent. I stayed outside all night, but come morning I forced myself to go home and get some rest. I don't think I slept for more than 2 or 3 hours, but when I woke up and called, they transferred her to a high security psych ward for psychotic and violent behaviour. I drove there and they let me see her for a short while. At first she was calm, expressing concern for the state of my clothes and hair and saying I should get some sleep. She quickly got herself worked up, talking about everyday things, however, and soon she was screaming at me, accusing me of abandoning her and refusing to see what she sees, that I was just a cog in the great conspiracy against her and those like her. In the end, they had to sedate her and drag her away. That was the last time I saw her. She wouldn't let me see her anymore after that, but the last thing she said got me thinking. Others like her. So I started doing research on the symptoms, and after about a week, I came across something called the Richter syndrome. Apparently, people suffering from Richter are somehow trapped in a mind maze, wherein they start seeing flaws in things. It's not really flaws per se, as some people see everything as broken or imperfect. People suffering from the Richter syndrome keep seeing jagged or straight tears, often beginning in books, texts, or artwork with repeating patterns, as if hidden in the information of letters. There's a rip in what should be and what is. I can't exactly explain it, since I've never suffered from it myself. But that's supposedly what it is. Ripta gets progressively worse until the people suffering from it start seeing these things everywhere, always in something though, and it's not just overlaid over their entire environment. They fixate on small things, a supposed crease, a tear, a furrow, a groove, a shallow indentation, always in the form of an uneven edge tear or line. Supposedly, it often happens to people with no history or predilection for mental health issues. And as I said before, it apparently starts small, then gets progressively worse over time, until they become violent and paranoid. Apparently, from what little I've been able to gather, there's been no cases of people getting better. They've had to be hospitalized for the rest of their lives. I haven't seen my wife since then. More than 2 years ago now. I never divorced her, and I haven't dated since. My life moves on, but I just can't forget that fixated mania. The preoccupation with rips in information. It just seems too bizarre. The weirdest thing about Ripta syndrome is that there's no mention of it existing prior to the digital age, which is why saying that the people suffering from it are hospitalized for the rest of their lives may be a bit premature. It also seems that almost all of the cases have never heard of others suffering from the disease or read about it, but they still tend to refer to themselves as one of many. That may just be the paranoid psychosis talking, but it just makes me wonder what the hell causes a healthy mind to develop such a weird fixation. Could you really tell yourself if it happened to you? I guess this isn't really very paranormal or supernatural in any way. I just wanted to share my story about how a loving, caring woman turned into a paranoid psychotic for seemingly no reason. I mourn her, though she's still alive, and I wish I could help both her and others like her. But the mind is a devious thing, inventing ideas and seeing patterns where there are none. I wonder what a rip in text, not a page, text, would even look like. Now, that was some incredible writing. Thank you so much. And I really recommend you go and take a look at this post because there's something really smart in the last section of the post that just ties this whole story together. And when I saw it, oh my god, I nearly gasped. But yeah, definitely go and check this one out. Now, I've got one last one lined up for you. So here we go. Once again, r/nosleep by the author blue_tidal. The Smiling Man. About 5 years ago, I lived downtown in a major city in the US. I've always been a night person, so I would often find myself bored after my roommate, who was decidedly not a night person, went to sleep. To pass the time, I used to go for long walks and spend the time thinking. I spent 4 years like this, walking alone at night, and never once had a reason to feel afraid. I always used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in the city were polite. But all of that changed in just a few minutes of one evening. It was a Wednesday, somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a police patrolled park quite a ways from my apartment. It was a quiet night, even for a weeknight, with very little traffic and almost no one on foot. The park, as it was most nights, was completely empty. I turned down a short side street in order to loop back to my apartment when I first noticed him. At the far end of the street, on my side, was the silhouette of a man, dancing. It was a strange dance, similar to a waltz, but he finished each box with an odd forward stride. I guess you could say he was dance walking, headed straight for me. Deciding he was probably drunk, I stepped as close as I could to the road to give him the majority of the sidewalk to pass me by. The closer he got, the more I realised how gracefully he was moving. He was very tall and lanky, and wearing an old suit. He danced closer still, until I could make out his face. His eyes were wide open and wild, head tilted back slightly, looking off at the sky. His mouth was formed in a painfully wide cartoon of a smile. Between the eyes and the smile, I decided to cross the street before he danced any closer. I took my eyes off him to cross the empty street. As I reached the other side, I glanced back, and then stopped dead in my tracks. He had stopped dancing and was standing with one foot in the street, perfectly parallel to me. He was facing me, but still looking skyward, smile still wide on his lips. I was completely and utterly unnerved by this. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man. He didn't move. Once I had put about half a block between us, I turned away from him, for a moment, to watch the sidewalk in front of me. The street and sidewalk ahead of me were completely empty. Still unnerved, I looked back to where he had been standing to find him gone. For the briefest moments, I felt relieved until I noticed him. He had crossed the street, and was now slightly crouched down. I couldn't tell for sure due to the distance and the shadows, but I was certain he was facing me. I had looked away from him for no more than 10 seconds, so it was clear that he had moved fast. I was so shocked that I stood there for some time, staring at him, and then he started moving toward me again. He took giant, exaggerated, tiptoed steps, as if he was a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, except he was moving very, very quickly. I'd like to say at this point I ran away or pulled out my pepper spray or my cell phone or anything at all, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely frozen, as the smiling man crept toward me. And then he stopped again, about a car length away from me, still smiling, his smile, still looking to the sky. When I finally found my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. What I meant to ask was, "What the fuck do you want?" in an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a whimper, "What the f..." Regardless of whether or not humans can smell fear, they can certainly hear it. I heard it in my own voice, and that only made me more afraid. But he didn't react to it at all. He just stood there, smiling. And then, after what felt like forever, he turned around, very slowly, and started dance walking away. Just like that. Not wanting to turn my back to him again, I just watched him go, until he was far enough away to almost be out of sight. And then I realized something. He wasn't moving away anymore, nor was he dancing. I watched in horror as the distant shape of him grew larger and larger. He was coming back my way, and this time he was running. I ran too. I ran until I was off the side road and back onto a better lit road with sparse traffic. Looking behind me then, he was nowhere to be found. The rest of the way home, I kept glancing over my shoulder, always expecting to see his stupid smile, but he was never there. I lived in that city for 6 months after that night, and I never went out for another walk. There was something about his face that always haunted me. He didn't look drunk, he didn't look high, he looked completely and utterly insane, and that's a very, very scary thing to see. All credit to blue_tidal for that one. Extremely well written, to the point where it sent shivers down my spine. So that's all for today, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, maybe subscribe, and if you've got any of your own horror stories or novels or anything that you've just written up, drop it in the comments and I'll have a look at it. But for now, that's all, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.